What's going on, guys? Welcome to the only football channel where we got a surprise episode today. That's right. Fantasy Football Tuesday. Something I thought of. Look, fantasy football is it is a very big deal. And I wanted to take Tuesdays to be a little more geared towards fantasy football. Not a little, like fully geared towards fantasy football. So if you are in a league, um I d- I'm not saying I'm great at fantasy football, but I have won my championship in a league with 10 people, and I'm pretty savvy. So, and if I suck, you guys can just let me know. All right. So, last year I was at a wedding and I ended up auto drafting. It was like my family was trying to take pictures. This was my stepsister's wedding, and it was a disaster. I'm like, oh, I'm on the clock, and the photographer's pulling us, and it's their day. So, I took the L, and basically I just did a lot of acquisitions on the waiver wire. And I just kind of lived on the waiver wire last season. I picked up Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, I had a pretty good team. The problem is I spent the whole year acquiring the team. But we did go on like a 4-5 win streak after starting 0-5. So this year, something similar happened. It was my friend's birthday. We were on the ferry. The signal was kind of trash, so there were draft picks that I liked, and there were draft picks I didn't like. I've already proposed a trade, and I kind of want to just go through the fantasy team that I have and take a look at the players I have and the moves that I'm thinking of making. Okay. So if you guys got a fantasy football team, this could be, you could see if we have a similar team or if you agree with what I think. So I wanted to go through the 10 teams in my league and give you the rosters. Okay. And we'll talk about the strengths and the weaknesses of those teams. Okay. So the first team that we have, the more the merrier. When I first saw this team, I thought, of course, it's got to be DJ Moore, right? And it's Rick, and he doesn't have DJ Moore, not on his team. So, copyright, basically. That's cool. But he does have Lamar Jackson as his quarterback. I mean, that's a solid quarterback. I mean, that's definitely not one that you're picking off the waiver week in and week out. This is your plug in and play for the whole season. And really, there's about 7 quarterbacks that are just set and forget for the whole year. Lamar Jackson, you could make an argument that he's on or off that list, fringe. But I personally, I think he's on the list. Can he stay healthy? That's going to be really what's important about Lamar Jackson. But with all the weapons that they've added in Baltimore, things are set up for Lamar Jackson to have the most passing yards he's ever had in his career. Okay, then at running back, you got Joe Mixon. I like this pick because Joe Mixon is going to have a much larger role in the backfield with Pirine leaving and coming over to Denver. So this is his 7th season in Cincinnati. He was a second-round pick in 2017. He's had a pretty good season in and year in and year out. He's best viewed as an RB2, but he definitely has RB1 upside. And in this format, Rick is hoping Joe Mixon is RB1 because he's playing him as his RB1. And then at number 2, he's got Rachaad White. So right off the bat, I don't love Rashad White. Just I don't trust Tampa to be a strong team this year, and I wonder if, kind of what happened to Jonathan Taylor last year. When you're just on a team falling apart, it's really hard for there to be any gold shiny part of that. And unfortunately, running backs can be a victim of that. Can Rashad White have a great season despite that? I feel like you're kind of wishing in one hand. So right off the bat, I wouldn't say a weakness in the running back, but I would say that is not the strong suit. But then at wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver to draft in the NFL, is on the team. And then A.J. Brown, arguably two wide receiver number ones. So you can see right there why the running back is the way it is, because he went Justin Jefferson. And he actually picked Justin Jefferson first overall in the first round. So Justin Jefferson was the first pick in the draft. Okay. We're so accustomed to seeing running backs go first, but it's Justin Jefferson who goes number one. And then number 21 overall, he snags A.J. Brown. Darren Waller at tight end. I have him as a top 10 tight end. I'm expecting a heavy dose of him. We saw in the last preseason game, Daniel Jones and Darren Waller played one drive together, and I think he threw to Darren Waller like 5 separate times on that drive. So definitely getting him involved. And then flexing, you got Jahan Dotson. I actually have Dotson being a breakout player this year. I love this flex position right here because it definitely leaves some real wide receiver number one upside if Jahan Dotson does break out. But if he doesn't and he only gets you, 15 points week in and week out, that's still a strong flex. 49ers defense, arguably the best in the league. And then the Raiders kicker. This is Daniel Carlson. He became the first kicker to repeat as top fantasy scorer at the position since Steven Janikowski did it in 2015. A lot of that probably has to do with settling for field goals, not being able to punch it in. So a solid roster right here with the only glaring weakness, the running back position. And then going on to I'll give you the bench too. So George Pickens on the bench. Love that pick. George Pickens could have a monster year. Dalton Kincaid, solid tight end. I'm expecting Buffalo to try to implement him right away. So DeAndre Swift, obviously got traded to Philly from Georgia. This is a solid player to have on your bench, and then just kind of monitor, how big of a role is he going to have in this offense with the Eagles. Aaron Rodgers doesn't hurt, right? Because let's say Lamar does get hurt, you have insurance with a quarterback that's going to be really good. Darnell Mooney, he's pretty good, but is he going to play well enough to be anything more than somebody that you would flex during a bye week? I don't think so. Tyler Algier had 1,000 yards rushing last year. He's going to have a heavy role in the offense. They're probably going to run a lot of 3 running back sets with Algier and also Bijan Robinson and Cordell Patterson. So is that a little too, many cooks in the kitchen? Maybe, but I still think we'll have to wait and see. And then Rashawn Johnson, the running back for Chicago that they drafted. Definitely a homer pick right there. And then we have, this is another team who is Jake Elliott. Okay, quarterback Joe Burrow. Right off the bat, you got probably a top 5 quarterback. Tony Pollard, a lot of people are expecting him to have the best year for running back for fantasy. Um, I'm not sure if he's going to be hitting the ground running. He broke his leg in the playoff game, but he's finally earned that spot. RB1, no Zeke. If he is going to pick up right where he left off, Dallas has a really good offensive line. He's a top 10 fantasy option, period. So, Joe Burrow, Tony Pollard, so far, so good. Then you go to Buffalo and you got James Cook. I'm hearing that they are getting James Cook more involved. He's getting better with pass protection so that they're not having to take him out of the game as much. And he's also he plays a huge role in the receiving. So in a PPR league, he's going to, get maybe 5 catches a game just right at the line of scrimmage. So pretty solid there. Cooper Kupp, we saw what he's capable of 2 years ago, Triple Crown, but last year was obviously a disappointment. There is a little bit of a gamble, hoping that Cooper Kupp will pick up where he left off. So, the upside is there, but if that's your wide receiver number 1, you would like to not have to be gambling at that position. I would like Cooper Kupp to be on a monster team at wide receiver number 2. That would be a good lineup. Wide receiver number 2 for this team is Deontay Johnson, Pittsburgh wide receiver. He could emerge as a wide receiver number 1. So to me, you got 2 wide receiver 2s with wide receiver 1 potential. And then at tight end, you got Evan Ingram, who is building rapport with Trevor Lawrence. I'm expecting him to even have a better year this year. But I'm not sure if he's going to, be top 10. I would say maybe he's somewhere around 12, 13. And then flexing Najee Harris. I like that. I think Najee Harris is going to have a much better year with a new offensive line. The Steelers, they've done a lot of work on their offensive line, and they're going to run the football better this year than they did last year. And if Najee Harris gets back into RB1 territory and you're flexing him, to me, this team is looking really good. And even more surprisingly, the bench is pretty deep as well. Jonathan Taylor's on the bench. Obviously, today we found out that he was on the PUP list. So physically unable to perform. He's going to miss a minimum of 4 games. But the goal is going to be, because once the roster is due, right, the next opportunity for the Colts to trade him would be before the NFL trade deadline on October 31st, which will be Halloween. And then if they don't get him traded by then it would be in the 2024 season. They would have to franchise tag him and look for a trade partner. So how fast is this going to happen? We saw Le'Veon Bell hold out. Holdouts typically haven't worked out. History tells us that. We talked about Le'Veon Bell this offseason of him saying holding out was one of the worst decisions he made, and it was a dumb decision. So I'm hoping for the best for this whole situation. I just hope whatever happens, Taylor's on the field for somebody playing football. And then you got Alvin Kamara, who's suspended, but that might be a good late season addition. Deshaun Watson, Brian Robinson Jr. I love this running back, Washington Commanders. He was shot last offseason, and he came in late into the season. I'm expecting him to have a good season, and having him on the bench is pretty solid if he starts producing. So this is probably already, Rashad Penny, running back, Philly, Rondale Moore, and Daniel Jones, I'm not crazy about. But honestly, just with Jonathan Taylor, Kamara, Deshaun Watson, Brian Robinson, this team has the ability to, hey, if Cooper Kupp's not playing too well, maybe we can throw somebody else in. It has a lot of running back options. I mean, Brian Robinson, Jonathan Taylor, and Alvin Kamara are all running backs on the bench. So if this team runs into a wide receiver problem, perhaps they'll end up trading Jonathan Taylor, or Alvin Kamara, or even if Robinson starts balling out, you have those to try to trade and get maybe a Amon-Ra St. Brown or a CeeDee Lamb or somebody like that. That'll consistently get you points. Moving on to the next team. This team is titled Last Place because that is what we do to whoever comes in last place every year. At quarterback, we got Geno Smith. Look, I don't love that pick. Geno Smith seems like somebody that he can have weeks where he's a great QB1, but then he can also have weeks where, he gets 7 points. Let me see if he had any of those games. What comes to mind right away is the 49ers. They got to play the 49ers twice. So when you include playing the Niners twice and the bye week, that's already, let's see, complete stats. So last season, no, they went all the way back to 2013 with the Jets. I just want to see how many points he scored last year. Okay, so here. So he got 15 points against the 49ers, 12 points against the Chiefs, 17 points against the Jets, 13 points week 18 against the Rams, 20 points against the Carolina Panthers, 22, 19, 19, 20, 19, 13, 12. There's a 6 in there. That's San Francisco week 2. So, I mean, he's 70% of the time, 75% of the time you're good, but he doesn't hit that 100% mark that, the top 7 quarterbacks do. I would have him at like probably around QB 15, maybe a little higher, QB 13. Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Look, 2 rookies, 2 of the top 2 rookies. I like both of these running backs, but I don't like both of these running backs on the same team. It's, it's the NFL. It's a new league. How is Detroit going to use Jahmyr Gibbs? Is he going to be featured as, 90% of the snaps, or is he going to be splitting? Bijan Robinson, obviously 3 different running backs like we talked about. Is he going to be the one that's leading the team in carries, or is that going to be Tyler Algier or Cordell Patterson? It's definitely not going to be Cordell Patterson, but is it going to be Tyler Algier? 2 great picks, but just on the same team, we'll see. It could work out. It could be a grand slam. But it also could blow up. So Amon-Ra St. Brown, great pick at wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb, great pick at wide receiver. So you got your 2 wide receivers. You took a chance on 2 young running backs. You missed at quarterback with Geno Smith. And when I say missed, I just mean you didn't get the best. Did you get a top 7 quarterback? Did you get? If you didn't, then I'm going to just say, you missed at that. Okay. The ideal is to go down every position and you have as many of the best options as possible. So, Dalton Schultz at tight end, Houston. We'll see. I'm not really big on Houston this year. Christian Watson flexed. He's going to be the top target for Jordan Love, but how well will Jordan Love be? The Cowboys defense, sure. And then Jason Myers for Seattle. And then DJ Moore. I'm telling you, DJ Moore should probably be flexed over Christian Watson. I would do that immediately. I think this is definitely the worst team so far. But look, if Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb all have a good year, that's fine and all, but you're still hoping Geno Smith and Dalton Schultz, with CJ Stroud. I mean, it's a lot of hoping. You're hoping, Jordan Love is going to connect with Christian Watson. I could see this team losing the most out of the two teams I've gone over. All right, now we're going to the next three. We got quarterback Josh Allen. Josh Allen, definitely a top option at the quarterback position. That's a hit. Josh Jacobs, that's a hit. Ramondre Stevenson, that's a hit. Jamar Chase, that's a hit. So far, the top 4 players on this team are all set and forget. We have to go all the way to wide receiver 2 to find our first problem, and that's Chris Godwin. Now, the guy that has this team, he loves drafting Chris Godwin. I swear he does it every year, but he is not a great option at wide receiver number 2. So, especially with the Baker Mayfield stuff, I mean, I just don't think it's a great option, but that's fine because you nailed all those other ones. And then at tight end, Dallas Goedert, he definitely has number 1 tight end potential in another season with Hurts. Cam Akers being flexed, absolutely love that. Patriots defense is going to be solid, and McPherson's going to be solid. So this is a good team, man. This is a good team. And then in the bench, you got Michael Pittman Jr., Michael Thomas, Jamal Williams, Elijah Mitchell, Jared McKinnon, Tyler Higbee, Kenny Pickett. The bench is whatever. It's not terrible. It's not great. But the starting players on this team, they're looking really, really good, okay? Saquon D's, like suck on D's. I think this team is one of the best as well. You got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. And as you guys know, I have Trevor having a really good year, MVP. So you got Trevor at quarterback. You got an angry Saquon Barkley at running back. You got Dameon Pierce at running back. Hit. Stephon Diggs, hit. DK Metcalf at wide receiver 2, hit. Pat Freiermuth, hit. Devontae Smith, hit. Saints defense, maybe. I mean, the Saints can have a really good defense this year. We'll just have to wait and see. Okay. And then Tyler Bass. So this is a team that does not have a glaring weakness at it. It looks like they're probably going to end up just picking up their defenses week in and week out. And I love doing that. But this year, I really like the Dolphins defense with Vic Fangio and Ramsey and Chubb and all those boys. But I'm actually tempted to pick up the Ravens defense because they're playing the Texans week 1, and I expect there to be mistakes made. So I do like picking up defenses week in and week out. And then on the bench, we got Miles Sanders, Mike Williams, Sky Moore, Antonio Gibson, Dak Prescott, Jeff Wilson, Samaje Perine. All people that are probably in a tier 2 to 3 category, a couple tier 4s, but all players worth monitoring there on the bench. And then team number 6, this is my team. This is my team that I have yet to name, but I have the players. So at quarterback, we have Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields because you're not having to use your first or second pick on him, but I do think he is a set and forget type of player. Justin Fields is going to go out there. People are saying he could have an MVP type season. He's got DJ Moore. He's got the weapons. I'm expecting Justin Fields to be getting 20 plus points every single week, especially with the defense not necessarily being great. I'm hoping that there's some shootouts and things of that nature. Then at running back, Derrick Henry. Like, don't overthink it. Derrick Henry is good year in and year out. All he does is produce. Don't think that he's that old because he's 30. He still has a couple more productive years in him. Then at wide receiver 2, Breece Hall, Breece Hall is in an interesting situation right now with Dalvin Cook being traded. And this is actually something that I am trying to manage right now because Dalvin Cook is a star player. How is that going to affect how many carries Breece Hall gets? Well, the way I'm looking at it is Dalvin Cook was traded pretty late in the season. Dalvin Cook just had a baby, so he's on baby leave, maternity leave. So, or I think it'd be paternity leave. So anyway, I think when it comes to week 1, they're going to be leaning towards Breece Hall. And if Breece Hall picks up where he left off, it may actually be harder than, some would think to put Dalvin Cook into the game. They're going to find a way to put him in the game. They paid him too much money not to. But is Breece Hall still going to be a very capable RB2? I think so. But there is a little bit of hoping here. And that's the one thing I don't like doing. So, C plus B, may I say B minus with Breece Hall as RB2. Then at wide receiver number 1, we have Devontae Adams. And Devontae Adams, he's great every year. And then T. Higgins at wide receiver 2. T. Higgins has been one of the most consistent receivers year in and year out. The last 2 years are like nearly the exact same fantasy production wise. So I'm not too worried about that. And then at tight end, I got Kyle Pitts. I'm expecting Kyle Pitts to finally have that breakout year. He was drafted, number 3, 4 overall, something you just don't see out of tight ends. He was also, I think his target share was ridiculous. So it was like he was getting targeted on 70% of his routes, which means he's actually getting space and separation almost every play. Now with Desmond Ridder being maybe more capable than Marcus Mariota to find him, Kyle Pitts might be getting, 10 to 12 touchdowns this season. So I think Kyle Pitts definitely has tight end 1 upside. And then flex, Chris Olave, he was 1,000-yard receiver as a rookie last year. So there's nothing not to love about that. And then the Dolphins defense, and then Graham Gino, the New York Giants kicker. Gino's been the league's most accurate kicker over the last 3 or 6 seasons. He converted 132 of his 143 field goal tries. That's 92.3%. That includes going 90.6% in 2022, despite an average length of 43 yards, which was the second highest. So this is a solid kicker right here. And then on the bench, we have Mike Evans. Don't love Mike Evans. I like Mike Evans more than Chris Godwin, but at the same time, I don't like Tampa Bay's quarterback situation. Cortland Sutton, there's definitely boom potential because Sean Payton is the head coach and Jerry Jeudy and Tim Patrick are hurt. We got JSN, who is going to miss a couple weeks with wrist surgery, but he was the best wide receiver in the draft. David Njoku, he could be my starting tight end week in and week out. Between David Njoku and Kyle Pitts, I'm really happy about those 2 options. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, New England. And then I added Brock Purdy via free agency. If Brock Purdy starts where he left off, who knows? I just wanted to have some kind of insurance there. And then Albert Owakanabanam, He was traded today. He balled out in the preseason, the game that they just won 41-0. He had a lot of clutch fourth down catches, clutch touchdowns, one-hand catches. I mean, he earned himself a roster spot. And Sean Payton was like, thank you for jacking your value up. Now we're going to trade you. And we'll talk a little more about that later. Now we have another team, King of the North. This this guy's got Jalen Hurts as the quarterback. Nailed it. Travis Etienne and Alexander Madison. I love those picks. Deebo Samuel. Love it. DeAndre Hopkins. It looks really good on paper. DeAndre Hopkins is a star receiver. How is he going to be in Tennessee? I'm going to have to wait and see. But at wide receiver 2, you're not asking him to be a wide receiver 1, so I love it. Tight end, you got Travis Kelce flexing Javonte Williams, who's going to be probably on some sort of a pitch count coming back from injury. And then you got the Jets on defense and Justin Tucker, best kicker in the game. This is a really solid team. I know Alexander Madison averaged about, I think, 21, 22 points in Dalvin Cook's absence so far. So they wouldn't, like I said this earlier, they would not have traded Dalvin Cook if they didn't feel like Alexander Madison was capable of the same kind of production. So I think this is a really good team. On the bench, you got Odell Beckham Jr., Gabriel Davis, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Kirk, a lot of wide receiver options, a lot of boom potential wide receivers. Jerry Jeudy could have a huge year. Odell Beckham could be a huge factor, take that wide receiver 1 role in Baltimore. Christian Kirk is, becoming one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets. And then Zach Ertz, whatever. Anthony Richardson, love that. That is some boom potential right there on the bench. But you'll probably only throw him in to when Jalen Hurts is on a bye week, or you just draft him so a team out there doesn't get him. You know what I mean? Keeping certain players away from other people sometimes is part of the game too. We call that defense. And then he's got Tank Bigsby on the bench. This guy is a Jaguars fan, so this is the homer pick. You got to have at least one homer pick. It makes the most sense to make it your last pick. So really solid team right there. Chew you out, quarterback Kirk Cousins, CMC, Nick Chubb, Calvin Ridley. Love these 3. CMC, Nick Chubb, Calvin Ridley. Absolutely love those 3. I just proposed the trade to this team. And I'll tell you who they got on their team entirely before I tell you what the trade was. So after Calvin Ridley, they have Amari Cooper, who was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. And if Deshaun Watson's going to make a step forward, Amari Cooper might be poised for another solid wide receiver 2 season. Mark Andrews, solid tight end. James Conner, Arizona running back. I don't love that personally. I don't really trust anything in Arizona right now. And we just found out Kyler Murray is going to start the season on the PUP list, so he's not even going to play the first 4 games. Is that good for James Conner? I have no idea. Steelers defense and Cameron Dicker, the kicker. That is this team. So I would say they do have a weakness at the flex position. Ideally, and if you're in a league with only 10 people, you want to flex at least a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, RB1, or tight end, that a top 5 tight end. That's the situation you want to be in. This guy is not in that situation. So the trade that I offered him, because I think Calvin Ridley is going to have a big year, and I think Nick Chubb is going to also have a big year without Kareem Hunt. So I offered him Breece Hall. I offered him Jackson Smith, JSN, and I offered him T. Higgins. So I offered T. Higgins, JSN, and Brees Hall for Nick Chubb and Calvin Ridley. So if that got accepted, my lineup would look like this: Justin Fields, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Chris Olave, Dolphins defense. That would be a nasty lineup. Are they going to let me get that lineup? We're going to have to wait and see if the trade gets accepted. But I thought it was a win-win because I'm giving him 3 weapons. So now instead of flexing James Conner, he can flex JSN. And then instead of Calvin Ridley, now he's got T. Higgins. And then, he lost Nick Chubb, but he'll have Brees Hall. I still think that's a win-win. We'll see what happens. I think a lot of people in our league, they always assume that they're getting screwed over. They're like, well, why would he want to do this trade if it works out for me? And it's like, hey, come on, guys. There's something called a win-win trade. But I think a lot of people are just opposed to it because they're like, if you want to do this trade, obviously you're trying to screw me. But hopefully this guy will consider it. And then on the bench, he's got A.J. Dillon, Brandon Cooks, Cole Kmet, Treylon Burks, Adam Thielen, Jared Goff, and Tyler Boyd. Not a bad bench. Not a great bench. Oh, wow. I found the best team. Or definitely competing for the best team. Justin Herbert, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, TJ Hawkinson, Brandon Ayuk, Eagles defense, Younghoe Koo at kicker. The bench has Drake London, Dalvin Cook, and Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC that was drafted. They're going to be doubling Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison may be the beneficiary of that. Quentin Johnson, Zach Charbonnet, and Bryce Young in the Jags defense. This team is loaded. Absolutely loaded. Is Aaron Jones going to have a big year? Probably. Kenneth Walker, he was really good last year. He's probably going to have a better year. Tyreek's going to do Tyreek things. Is he going to get suspended for smacking the boater? I don't know. Garrett Wilson, the only thing I worry about, I wouldn't say worry, but keep in mind the Jets do have a lot of wide receivers, right? Randall Cobb. I think Randall Cobb just had a baby. They got Alan Lazard. But with the sudden retirement of Corey Davis, that should help Garrett Wilson stay, like a true wide receiver number 1. This is a really good team. And then the last team, saving Matt Ryan. Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, great. Austin Eckler, solid. Isaiah Pacheco. I'm not really big on Chiefs running backs, but it's an RB2, so not bad. Jalen Waddle, good pick. Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen can he stay healthy? It's like Mike Williams, right? When he's on the field, he can be really good. Justin Herbert's really good, but can he stay healthy? And they also drafted Quentin Johnson out of TCU. So how involved will he be? He definitely is a project and has a lot of coaching that he needs to take before he's going to, really threaten to take Keenan Allen and Mike Williams' share. But something to keep an eye on. And George Kittle started the season really slow last year. How is he going to? Because he's a true tight end, so he's going to be heavily involved in the running. But he does play a lot, and he is on the field for a majority of the snaps. So, he's a top tight end option. Terry McLaurin at the flex position is scary. Scary Terry. Commanders defense is going to be good. And then Butker, the kicker, he missed some time last year with injuries, but he should be healthy and play a full season. I think he had a groin thing last year. So those are the teams. I'll say right off the bat. The team with Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, Kenneth Walker, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Hawkinson, Brandon Ayuk, Eagles defense, and Young Hoku is a really solid team. I like Jalen Hurts, Travis Etienne, Alexander Madison, Debo Smith, DeAndre Hopkins, Travis Kelce, Javonte Williams. I think my team has a potential, especially if the trade gets accepted. Justin Fields, Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Chris Olave. That's pretty solid. And then a weakish team I thought was Geno Smith, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, St. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Christian Watson. And then Jake Elliott, he had a really solid bench with Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara, even Deshaun Watson and Brian Robinson. But, the Jonathan Taylor situation is kind of, weird. And then Alvin Kamara being suspended after having a really disappointing last year. You definitely don't feel great about it, but there's just certain guys that their name looks too good to, keep off of your team, and you kind of get stuck in this thing where you don't want to let them go because their name is so, special, but then they just kind of take up space all year. And that happens to people every single year. So there's a lot of solid teams here. Let me know what you guys have on your fantasy football team. I mean, if you have your roster and you want to put it in the comments, I would love to go through it and give you my honest feedback on what I think. There was a lot of news today around the NFL, the roster deadline coming up that I wanted to cover really quick. So the Broncos tight end situation is kind of interesting. The roster came out. Initially, it has Adam Trotman, the tight end that Sean Payton brought over from the Saints. I believe that he was drafted. I think he might have been undrafted. He was I think he was a quarterback and a wide receiver, and then he switched to tight end. And Sean Payton just loves those versatile type players. And he's very versatile, where we drafted Greg Dulcich last year, and he's really good as a pass catching option. So I still like Greg Dulcich to maybe have more fantasy points by the end of the season, but I expect Adam Trotman to have more snaps. So therefore, more opportunities. So long story short, I think both of these options, Adam Trotman or Greg Dulcich, should not be starting. They should be on someone's bench though, and they should be being monitored week in and week out. The Eagles tight end situation changed because they have Dallas Goedert, but they traded for Albert Okwuegbunam today. So Albert O's really great preseason performance resulted in his value being high enough for a trade. And that trade was, it was like the Broncos sent Albert O in a 2025 7th round pick, and they got a 2025 6th round pick. Not much, but they got one pick 1 round earlier. They traded a 6th for a 7th, or a 7th for a 6th. And then Jonathan Taylor's value. So we know he's going to miss at least 4 games. But from what I've heard, Adam Schefter said today that Jonathan Taylor would have been ready to go week 1. He's ready right now, but this whole thing has to do with his beef with Jim Irsay. Okay. He's not going to play for the Colts, and he's kind of putting his foot down. So he's going to, have these health issues, but if he can get traded, by week 1 or week 2, then he's a really solid option. But it is a little bit of a gamble in case he really doesn't play this season. You got Bailey Zappi was cut today. Um, does this mean that Bill O'Brien has a lot of faith in Mac Jones? We know last year that there were like Patriots fans that were chanting like Zappy, Zappy, and Bailey Zappi was trending, and it was the buzz in Gillette. But this is pretty cool. I mean, cutting the guy that would be chanted if Mac Jones was having a bad game is I think is a really good sign for Mac Jones. It's like, hey, we fully support you, we fully back you, and we don't want there to be any competition within the fan base. I think that this is a sign that they're all in on Mac Jones. So I was surprised to see the Patriots release Bailey Zappi, and they also waived Malik Cunningham, who was a wide receiver / quarterback. So really going all in on Mac Jones. Will Joe Burrow practice next week? We know Joe Burrow went down, carted out the field, very scary situation. What is his status going into week 1 if you have Joe Burrow? Well, if you're listening to Zach Taylor, he said we'll see. Talking about whether Joe Burrow will practice next week. So I do believe that this is a day-to-day injury. I don't think this is like Zach Taylor trying to get, maybe a tactical advantage going into week 1 because they might have to scout and prepare for 2 different quarterbacks. But I guess I would be surprised if Joe Burrow didn't, go out there week 1 and play. But you also don't want to rush any kind of an injury this early in the season. Like it would be better to be 1-3 and have Joe Burrow come in healthy week 5 than to be 4-0 and you don't have Joe Burrow for the rest of the season. So I do think this is something that needs to be monitored carefully. And that may lead to them being more conservative and Joe Burrow missing a game maybe. Do running backs die in New York? Okay. So we talked a little bit about the Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook situation. Breece Hall was really, really good last year. He actually got injured during the Broncos game. I think it was an ACL or an MCL out for the season. He's going to be back. Dalvin Cook traded late in the season on paternity leave. How long is it going to take him to get in the game, get the playbook, and hit the ground running? Obviously, this Jets team right now is in Super Bowl mode. So I wouldn't be surprised if they keep Dalvin Cook out of the game until he's brought all the way up to speed. Until then, I expect to just see, just sprinkles of Dalvin Cook into the game. Too much talent to have on the sideline, but this team is too focused to bring in somebody that's not all on the same page, if that makes sense. So for that reason, I still like Breece Hall, but like I said, I am currently trying to trade him for Nick Chubb. The Broncos acquire kicker Will Lutz, and I thought this was what was really interesting. I wasn't expecting another trade. Denver had been going through a kicking thing. They sent Brandon McManus over to Jacksonville, and we were trying to see who was going to be our field goal kicker. We had Marr, who infamously missed 4 field goals last year in the postseason, and we also had Elliott Fry. So the Broncos release Brett Mayer, who went 4 for 6 during the preseason. He did miss a 47-yarder, and he had a 52-yard field goal blocked. Elliott Fry was also in the field goal kicker battle. I did think after the last game that Brett Mayer, whatever, I thought he was going to win it. I was really surprised to see But this just shows you how much attention to detail Sean Payton has. Now, the kicker position, no doubt, is important. But if you're going from, let's say you have a good kicker, right? Or let's say you, not a good kicker, but he's passable. We can put him out there week in and week out. He's not a liability. He's also not great. He's just functional, right? For Sean Payton to say, I want to go from functional to slightly above average in a position that's easy to just gloss over, I think it shows potentially that Sean Payton thinks that this team may settle for field goals often. And if they are in Mile High for half the season where you can kick farther, maybe having a kicker that can kick a 60-yard field goal is important. And we didn't see Brett Mayer make any field goal farther than 60 yards ever. So last year, when we look at Will Lutz and what he did in 2022, I saw just on his quick highlights, I saw that he made a 59-yard field goal against Green Bay. He also made a 51-yard field goal at Atlanta, and he made a 60-yarder in London versus the Vikings, a 56-yarder in Seattle, a 54-yarder in Philly. So we definitely got a good kicker here. We got the Beast Hydre into the chat. He goes, Tank Bigsby for Jawan Johnson. I have Pitts already. So you got Kyle Pitts on your team, and you're looking at Bigsby for Jawan Watson. Is there a question that you have in there? And how many players or teams do you have in your league? If you're just catching in now, I just went through all of our teams that we have in the league, and we're trying to keep up with these current events to see how they might be affecting some of the lineups, like Jonathan Taylor being on the PUP list and Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook's workload being, interconnected. So I actually did win the first year that we had this, the what do you call it? The fantasy football trophy. We get a really, really good placard on there. So Tank Bigsby, though, if you're saying straight up, should I pick up Bigsby and drop off Johnson? It's a 12-man PPR league. Well, I think Bigsby is going to do pretty well, but with Travis Etienne, remember, he got drafted and was injured his whole entire rookie season. Last year, he did so well. I think by like week 7, they sent James Robinson to New York. After they sent him to New York, James Robinson kind of died. And yeah, running backs seem to just die in New York. The same thing happened to Le'Veon Bell. So I'm worried about Dalvin Cook a little bit. But back to the Jaguars. I am expecting Travis Etienne to take another stride forward going into this season. So you have Jawan Johnson right now. Tell me this, is Tank Bigsby, is he on the waiver wire right now? Or is this a trade that you're looking at? Another tight end that I really like, I think it was Broderick Jones, I think out of Pittsburgh. So Jawan Jones, tight end out of the New Orleans Saints, averaged, let's see, his last game averaged 14.5 yards a reception. That's pretty good, but he only had 2 receptions for 29 yards. Draft rank 178th. Let's look at the fantasy projection. Johnson returns as a top pass-catching tight end in New Orleans after coming out of nowhere to finish 15th at the position in fantasy last season. They converted wide receiver, made a little noise with 4 touchdowns on 21 targets. And now you got to think with, what's his name, David Carr or Derek Carr, that they're going to be doing, a little bit better in the passing game. Mickey Loomis is definitely going to, Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton were kind of on one accord. So I have faith in Mickey Loomis as a GM to put a good field out there. So would you pick up Bigsby and drop off Johnson? Personally, I would not, but I would need to see your entire team because, like, tight end is really hard, right? Usually you got like 10 tight ends, and then after those, it's really kind of like shooting darts in the dark. I mean, you got your Mark Andrews and your Fearmouth and Travis Kelce and George Kittle and Darren Waller. And then you get into your Kyle Pitts, the people you believe to have a big year, maybe, 4 more of those. And then after you go, you get into tier 3. Tier 3 is a bad place to be. So if your starting tight end is Travis Kelce or someone like along that nature, then I would say, okay, drop off Juwan Johnson. But if you have like another tier 2 or tier 3 tight end, I would at least keep one tight end on the bench, because what you don't want to happen is Derek Carr, gets a really good relationship going with Juwan Johnson, and you end up looking back and trying to pick him back up, and someone else snagged him off the waiver wire, and then you end up playing him later in the season. Any player with a boom potential, I'll probably keep on my on my bench and see, because there is some massive upside there with Johnson. And 12-man PPR, I wish we had 2 more teams. I think it's a lot more challenging. Those 2 extra teams make a huge difference, man. They really do. So Broncos got the new kicker, and I got the trade. We went over fantasy. So this is what we'll do on Tuesdays. We'll come in. I'll give you my updates, my team, the roster, who are playing, what players I like. We'll keep Tuesdays all about fantasy football. If you guys wouldn't mind, please like and subscribe to this channel so you can catch all of the videos that we do. It's going to be a really busy season, but I think fantasy football lovers are going to love this channel. We're going to go through. I'm going to give you my top waiver ads, of the week. And I'm going to give you my favorite matchups of the week. And we'll just go from there, answering questions live. We'll definitely, keep that rolling. If anybody's wondering, should I start this guy or this guy? This is the place to do it. So if you want to see more content like this, also, you can subscribe or follow me on my Twitter at FTBLONLYPODCAST, Football Only Podcast, and you can check out some of my content there. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode. We'll try to keep them at around an hour every single Tuesday night. Hopefully you guys have some really sick ass fantasy football teams. And if you don't, hopefully I'll be able to help you get ready for the season with a team that you can believe in, a team that you can put your stamp of approval on. I know for me, I just got to make one more trade to fully commit to my team, and we're going to keep up with it together. So until I see you guys next week, have a great day. Go Broncos, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.